The morning sun cast long shadows across Riverdale as 14-year-old Marcus Johnson stared at himself in the bathroom mirror. Today marked his first day at Lakeside High School, and his stomach twisted with a mixture of hope and dread. "You got this," he whispered to his reflection, adjusting the collar of his blue button-up shirt. Moving to a new town during freshman year wasn't what Marcus had planned, but his father's career had other ideas. Darrell Johnson, a respected police officer with 20 years of experience, had recently accepted the position as Riverdale's new police chief. The promotion meant better pay and new opportunities, but for Marcus, it meant starting over again. The Johnson family had arrived in Riverdale just 2 weeks ago. Their new home on Maple Street still had boxes stacked in every room, but Marcus's mother had made sure his school supplies were unpacked and ready. As a teacher herself, she understood the importance of a good first impression. "Marcus, breakfast is ready," his mother called from downstairs. When Marcus entered the kitchen, his father sat at the table in his new police uniform, badge gleaming under the kitchen lights. "Looking sharp, son," Chief Johnson said with a proud smile. "First day of high school is a big deal." Marcus nodded, picking at his scrambled eggs. "Dad, I was thinking, maybe we don't need to tell everyone you're the new police chief right away." His parents exchanged glances. "I just want people to know me as Marcus first," he explained. "Not as the police chief's kid, you know?" Chief Johnson considered this for a moment before nodding. "I understand. You want to make your own way, that's fair." The drive to school was quiet. Marcus watched through the window as the small town of Riverdale passed by. Unlike their previous home in the city, this place felt small and exposed. As one of the few black families in town, Marcus knew they stood out. When they pulled up to Lakeside High School, Marcus took a deep breath. The 2-story brick building was smaller than his old school, with about 400 students milling around the front entrance. "Call if you need anything," his mother said, giving his hand a squeeze. "And remember, be myself. I know, Mom," Marcus finished with a small smile. As he walked toward the school entrance, Marcus felt eyes on him. Some students looked curious, others indifferent, but a few stares lingered too long for comfort. Marcus kept his head high and his eyes forward, just as his father had taught him. The main office was busy with last-minute schedule changes. The secretary, Mrs. Porter, gave Marcus a friendly smile as she handed him his class schedule and locker combination. "Welcome to Lakeside, Marcus. I think you'll like it here," she said. "Your homeroom is with Mr. Collins in room 112. Navigating the unfamiliar hallways, Marcus noticed the school's trophy cases filled with basketball and football championships. He had played basketball at his old school and hoped to continue here. It might be a way to make friends. Room 112 was nearly full when Marcus arrived. 25 pairs of eyes turned to look at him as he entered. Mr. Collins, a tall man with gray-streaked hair, greeted him warmly. "Class, this is Marcus Johnson. He's new to Riverdale, so let's make him feel welcome." Marcus took the only empty seat near the back of the room. The girl next to him smiled and introduced herself as Aisha. "Where are you from?" she whispered as Mr. Collins took attendance. "Chicago," Marcus replied. "Why would anyone leave Chicago for Riverdale?" she asked with a laugh. Marcus shrugged. "My dad got a new job." What he didn't say was that his father was now the man in charge of keeping this small town safe. For now, Marcus wanted to be just another student trying to find his place. He had no idea that in just a few weeks, keeping that secret would become impossible. 3 weeks passed, and Marcus had settled into a routine at Lakeside High. He made a few friends, mostly kids from his math class and Aisha, who shared his interest in photography. He had even joined the basketball team's tryouts and impressed Coach Wilson with his skills. The Johnson family was still unpacking boxes, but Riverdale was starting to feel a little more like home. Chief Johnson kept a low profile during his first month, focusing on meeting his officers and learning about the town's needs before making any public appearances. It was an ordinary Tuesday when everything changed. The school cafeteria buzzed with lunchtime noise as Marcus balanced his tray of spaghetti and chocolate milk. He scanned the room for an empty seat when someone stuck out a foot in his path. Marcus stumbled, his tray tipping forward. The spaghetti sauce splashed across his white shirt and onto the floor. "Watch where you're going," a deep voice said with a laugh. Marcus looked up to see Tyler Brooks, a junior with a reputation that had reached even the new kid's ears. Tyler stood 6 feet tall with broad shoulders from years of playing football. Around him sat his usual group of friends, all wearing varsity jackets. "Sorry," Marcus muttered, even though it wasn't his fault. He bent down to pick up his fallen tray. "What did you say?" Tyler asked, standing up. The cafeteria grew quieter as students sensed trouble. "I said sorry," Marcus repeated, meeting Tyler's eyes. Tyler looked Marcus up and down, taking in his sauce-stained shirt. "You're that new kid, right? The one from Chicago?" Marcus nodded, feeling everyone's eyes on him. "We don't need your kind here," Tyler said, his voice low but clear enough for nearby tables to hear. "Riverdale was just fine before you showed up." The words hit Marcus like a punch. He had heard comments like this before, but never so directly, never so publicly. "My kind?" Marcus asked, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "What kind is that?" Tyler stepped closer. "You know exactly what I mean." Aisha appeared at Marcus's side. "Come on, Marcus. I have an extra shirt in my locker you can borrow." Tyler laughed. "Better listen to your girlfriend. Run along now." As Marcus turned to leave, Tyler knocked the empty tray from his hands. "Oops," Tyler smirked. "You dropped something else." Several students laughed. Others looked away, uncomfortable but unwilling to step in. Marcus felt heat rise to his face. His father's voice echoed in his head. Sometimes walking away takes more strength than fighting back. With Aisha beside him, Marcus left the cafeteria, the sound of Tyler and his friends laughing behind them. "Don't let him get to you," Aisha said as they walked down the hall. "Tyler's been like that since elementary school. His dad owns half the businesses in town, so he thinks he owns the place too." Marcus nodded, but the encounter had shaken him more than he wanted to admit. For the first time since moving to Riverdale, he wished people knew who his father was. Later that day, as Marcus was heading to basketball practice, he found his locker vandalized. Someone had scratched the word "Leave" across the Neville door. Coach Wilson noticed Marcus's distraction during practice. "Everything okay, Johnson?" he asked as the team took a water break. "Yes, Coach," Marcus lied. "Just a rough day." That evening, Marcus didn't tell his parents about what happened. His father came home late, tired from a long day of meetings. His mother was busy preparing lesson plans for her substitute teaching job that would start next month. Marcus stayed in his room, staring at his ceiling, wondering if moving to Riverdale had been a mistake. He didn't know that Tyler Brooks had already marked him as a target, or that tomorrow would be even worse. The next morning, Marcus hesitated at his front door. His mother noticed his unusual delay. "Are you feeling sick?" she asked, pressing a hand to his forehead. "No, Mom, I'm fine," Marcus assured her, forcing a smile. The truth was far from fine. The walk to school felt longer than usual as Marcus replayed yesterday's cafeteria incident in his mind. He had hoped Tyler's attack was a one-time thing, but the scratched message on his locker suggested otherwise. When Marcus arrived at school, he found Aisha waiting by the main entrance. "I was worried you might not come today," she said. Marcus shrugged. "I dealt with guys like Tyler before." "Maybe, but Tyler's different," Aisha warned. "He doesn't just bully people, he destroys them." As if summoned by his name, Tyler appeared with 3 of his friends, blocking the hallway ahead. "Well, look who decided to come back," Tyler called out. Students nearby quieted, sensing trouble. Marcus tried to walk past, but Tyler stepped directly in his path. "I'm talking to you," Tyler said, shoving Marcus into the row of lockers. The metal handles dug into Marcus's back. "I don't want any trouble," Marcus said evenly. Tyler leaned in closer. "You should have thought about that before you moved here." A teacher emerged from a nearby classroom. "Is there a problem here, boys?" Tyler immediately stepped back, his face transforming into an innocent smile. "No problem, Ms. Williams. Just welcoming our new classmate." The teacher looked doubtful but continued down the hall. As soon as she was gone, Tyler whispered, "This isn't over," before walking away with his friends. Throughout the day, Marcus found himself constantly looking over his shoulder. Between third and fourth period, someone knocked his books from his hands. During gym class, his clothes disappeared from his locker, forcing him to wear his sweaty gym uniform for the rest of the day. By lunchtime, Marcus noticed other students keeping their distance from him. Even some of the basketball teammates who had been friendly before now avoided eye contact. They're scared of becoming targets too, Aisha explained as they sat alone at a lunch table. Tyler's dad is on the school board. Last year, a kid complained about Tyler, and suddenly his dad lost his job at Brooks Manufacturing. After school, Marcus headed to basketball practice, hoping for some relief. Instead, he found a note taped to his gym locker with a crude drawing and the words, "Go back to Chicago." Coach Wilson noticed Marcus's distracted performance. After practice, he held Marcus back. "Johnson, I need you focused. Whatever's going on, leave it off the court." Marcus nodded, but as he turned to leave, Coach added, "And if someone's giving you trouble, report it. The school has policies." Marcus almost laughed. Policies hadn't helped the kid whose dad lost his job. Walking home alone, Marcus took a shortcut through the park. He hadn't made it halfway when he heard footsteps behind him. Before he could turn around, someone shoved him hard. Marcus fell forward, scraping his palms on the concrete path. Tyler stood over him with two friends. "Thought you could avoid me." Marcus stood up slowly. "What do you want from me?" "I want you gone," Tyler said. "This town was fine before people like you started moving in." One of Tyler's friends pulled out a phone and started recording. "And if you even think about reporting this," Tyler continued, "remember what happened to the last kid who snitched." Marcus felt a cold anger rising inside him. He was tired of backing down, tired of being targeted for simply existing. "I'm not going anywhere," Marcus said firmly. Tyler's face darkened. "Wrong answer." As Tyler stepped forward, Marcus made a split-second decision. He wouldn't fight, but he wouldn't run either. Whatever happened next, he would face it standing tall, just like his father had taught him. What Marcus didn't know was that someone else was watching from across the park, someone who would change everything. The confrontation in the park ended with Marcus walking away with a bloody lip and torn jacket. Tyler and his friends had taken turns shoving him, all while recording on their phones. They didn't throw any direct punches. Tyler was too smart for that, but they made sure Marcus understood his place in their town. Posted online, Tyler had told his friend with the phone, "Let everyone see what happens when you don't listen." By the time Marcus reached home, he had wiped away most of the blood, but there was no hiding the dirt on his clothes or the tear in his jacket sleeve. He hoped to slip upstairs unnoticed, but his mother was waiting in the living room, grading papers. "Marcus?" she called as he tried to hurry past. "What happened to you?" "Nothing, Mom. I fell during basketball practice," he lied, keeping his face turned away. Mrs. Johnson set down her papers and crossed the room. Gently, she turned his face toward the light, examining his swollen lip. "This doesn't look like a basketball injury," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Tell me the truth." Before Marcus could answer, the front door opened and Chief Johnson walked in, still in uniform. One look at his son's face, and his expression hardened. "Who did this to you?" he asked. The question broke something in Marcus. After weeks of holding it in, of trying to handle things on his own, the dam finally burst. His shoulders slumped as tears welled in his eyes. "His name is Tyler Brooks," Marcus admitted, his voice cracking. "He's been after me since my second week here." Chief Johnson guided his son to the couch. "Start from the beginning." As Marcus told his parents everything, the cafeteria incident, the vandalized locker, the isolation, and finally, today's attack, his mother's expression shifted from concern to horror. His father's face remained stone-like, but his eyes revealed a brewing storm. "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" Mrs. Johnson asked, her hand squeezing Marcus's. "I wanted to handle it myself," Marcus said. "And everyone says Tyler's dad is powerful in town. He got someone's father fired last year when they complained." Chief Johnson stood up and paced the room. "No one is above the law in my town," he said, his voice low and controlled. "Not even the son of some businessman." "There's more," Marcus said quietly. He pulled out his phone and showed them a social media page where Tyler's friends had already posted the video from the park. In just a few hours, it had gathered dozens of comments, some expressing shock, others adding laughing emojis. Chief Johnson watched the video, his jaw tightening with each passing second. When it ended, he handed the phone back to Marcus. "This stops now," he said firmly. "What are you going to do?" Marcus asked, suddenly worried. Having his father step in as the police chief could make things even worse. What I should have done from the beginning. Chief Johnson replied. We're going to handle this properly, through the right channels. Mrs. Johnson brought ice for Marcus's lip. Tomorrow, you're staying home. But Marcus began to protest. It's not negotiable, his father interrupted. I need time to address this through the school administration first. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He kept checking his phone, watching as the video spread further. New comments appeared, some from students he thought were his friends, now distancing themselves or worse, joining in the mockery. Around midnight, his phone buzzed with a text from Aisha. Just saw the video. Are you okay? This has gone too far. Marcus typed back. My dad knows now. Everything's about to change. As he set down his phone, Marcus felt a strange mix of dread and relief. Tomorrow would be different. His father's position in town was about to become very public, and Tyler Brooks was about to learn exactly who he had been bullying. But as Marcus finally drifted off to sleep, he wondered if revealing his father's identity would make things better, or much worse. Chief Darrell Johnson sat in his office early Thursday morning, reviewing the video of his son's attack for the 10th time. Each viewing only strengthened his resolve. He had spent most of the night making calls, gathering information about Tyler Brooks and his family. What he learned painted a clear picture. Robert Brooks, Tyler's father, owned the largest manufacturing plant in Riverdale and had deep connections with local officials. Over the years, his money and influence had created a protective bubble around his son. At 8:00 a.m. sharp, Chief Johnson made a phone call to Principal Harriet Martinez at Lakeside High School. Good morning, Principal Martinez. This is Chief Johnson. I'd like to schedule a meeting with you today regarding a serious matter. Of course, Chief, she replied, sounding surprised. May I ask what this concerns? It's about a student named Tyler Brooks and his repeated harassment of my son, Marcus Johnson. There was a pause on the line. Your son. I wasn't aware Marcus was your son. We kept it quiet when we moved here, Chief Johnson explained. Marcus wanted to make his own way, but now I'm calling as both the parent and as the chief of police. By 9:30 a.m., Chief Johnson walked through the main entrance of Lakeside High School in his full uniform. Students stopped and stared as he made his way to the administration office. Whispers followed him down the hallway. Principal Martinez welcomed him into her office, where the school's vice principal and counselor were already waiting. Before we begin, Chief Johnson said, placing his phone on the table, I'd like you to watch something. The three administrators leaned forward as he played the video of Tyler and his friends attacking Marcus in the park. Principal Martinez's face grew increasingly troubled as the video continued. This is disturbing, she said when it ended. But Chief Johnson, I have to point out that this incident occurred off school grounds. This was just the culmination, he replied firmly. The harassment has been happening in your halls for weeks. He then showed them photos of Marcus's vandalized locker and screenshots of online comments from students. Why weren't we informed about this? The vice principal asked. Because students don't believe you'll protect them, Chief Johnson answered. They've seen what happens when someone stands up to the Brooks family. Principal Martinez shifted uncomfortably. What exactly are you asking us to do, Chief? I'm not asking. I'm informing you of what will happen next, Chief Johnson said calmly. First, a full investigation into all incidents involving Tyler Brooks, not just with my son. Second, implementation of your school's anti-bullying policy, which according to your handbook, includes immediate suspension for physical harassment. Mr. Brooks is on our school board, the vice principal noted quietly, which is why I've already scheduled a meeting with the superintendent this afternoon, Chief Johnson countered. I'm also prepared to open a formal police investigation into assault and cyberbullying if necessary. The room fell silent. My son wanted to handle this himself, Chief Johnson continued, his voice softening slightly. He didn't want special treatment because of who I am. But no child should suffer what he's experienced, regardless of who their parents are. Principal Martinez nodded slowly. We'll call Tyler Brooks to the office immediately and begin our investigation. As Chief Johnson left the meeting, he noticed a crowd of students had gathered in the hallway, many holding phones. The news was already spreading through the school. Marcus Johnson's father was the new police chief, and he was coming after Tyler Brooks. By lunchtime, the video that had humiliated Marcus was being removed from social media accounts across Riverdale. Students who had laughed or commented now scrambled to delete their involvement. Meanwhile, Tyler Brooks sat in the principal's office, still unaware of exactly why he had been called in or who exactly Marcus Johnson's father was. As he waited impatiently, complaining about missing class, he had no idea that his world was about to change completely. Outside the school, Chief Johnson made one more call, this time to Robert Brooks, requesting his presence at an urgent meeting that afternoon. The time for hiding was over. Justice was coming to Riverdale. Robert Brooks stormed through the doors of Lakeside High School at precisely 3:15 p.m. His expensive suit and confident stride reflected his status as the most powerful businessman in Riverdale. He had received a call from Principal Martinez about an urgent matter involving his son, but the details were vague. "This better be important," he muttered to his assistant, who hurried along beside him, taking notes. "I left a board meeting for this." When Robert reached the principal's office, he was surprised to find not only Principal Martinez waiting, but also the superintendent, the school's legal counsel, and a uniformed police officer he didn't recognize. "What's going on here?" Robert demanded. "Where's my son?" "Mr. Brooks, please have a seat," Principal Martinez said, gesturing to the only empty chair in the room. "Tyler is waiting in the next room. We wanted to speak with you first." Robert remained standing. "I don't have time for this. If Tyler broke some minor school rule, just tell me the fine and we'll be on our way." The uniformed officer stepped forward, extending his hand. "Mr. Brooks, I'm Chief Darrell Johnson. I recently took over the Riverdale Police Department." Robert gave the chief a quick once-over, barely shaking his hand. "And why is the police department involved in a school matter?" Chief Johnson maintained his calm demeanor. "Because your son and his friends have been harassing my son, Marcus, for weeks. Yesterday, they physically attacked him in the park and recorded it." "Your son?" Robert's expression shifted slightly. "I wasn't aware the new police chief had a son at Lakeside." "We kept it quiet when we moved here," Chief Johnson explained. "Marcus wanted to make his own way. Unfortunately, your son made that impossible." Principal Martinez gestured again to the empty chair. "Please, Mr. Brooks, you'll want to sit down for this." This time, Robert took the seat. The superintendent turned a laptop toward him and pressed play. The video showed Tyler and his friends surrounding Marcus, shoving him, laughing as he tried to maintain his dignity. Robert's face revealed no emotion as he watched. When the video ended, he shrugged. "Boys will be boys. It looks like harmless roughhousing to me." "This was not harmless," Chief Johnson said, his voice hardening. "This was the culmination of weeks of targeted harassment with clear racial undertones. And it's not the first time your son has bullied other students." The superintendent spoke up. "We've done a thorough review of past complaints against Tyler. There's a disturbing pattern, Mr. Brooks." "Complaints that were handled appropriately," Robert countered. "Complaints that were buried," Chief Johnson corrected him. "And in at least one case, a parent who lost his job at your factory shortly after filing a complaint. That's a separate investigation we'll be looking into." Robert's confident facade cracked slightly. "Are you threatening me, Chief Johnson?" "I'm informing you of the facts," Chief Johnson replied. "Tyler is currently suspended pending a full disciplinary hearing. The school board will determine whether expulsion is warranted." "I am on the school board," Robert snapped. "Yes, and you'll be recusing yourself from this decision," the superintendent added firmly. "We've already consulted with the board's ethics committee." Robert stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. My lawyer will." "Your lawyer should advise you wisely," Chief Johnson interrupted. "Because this isn't just about school discipline. The video shows assault. My son could press charges, and the district attorney is very interested in addressing the growing bullying problem in our schools." For the first time, uncertainty crossed Robert's face. The power dynamic he was accustomed to had suddenly shifted. Principal Martinez opened the door to the adjoining room. "I think it's time we brought Tyler in." Tyler entered, his usual swagger missing. Seeing his father surrounded by authority figures, including a police chief, had an immediate effect. His eyes darted nervously around the room. "Dad, what's going on?" he asked. Robert Brooks looked at his son, then back at Chief Johnson. The message was clear. This would not be handled with money or influence. This time, there would be real consequences. "Sit down, Tyler," his father said quietly. "We have a lot to discuss." The school gymnasium buzzed with conversation as students filed in for the special assembly. 2 weeks had passed since the confrontation in the principal's office, and rumors had spread throughout Lakeside High like wildfire. Everyone had heard that Tyler Brooks was suspended, but few knew the full story. Principal Martinez stepped up to the microphone at center stage. The murmuring crowd fell silent. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "Today marks an important moment for our school. For too long, we've allowed bullying and harassment to go unchecked. That changes now." Seated in the front row were Chief Johnson, Superintendent Wilson, and several members of the school board. Notably absent was Robert Brooks, who had resigned from the board 3 days earlier citing personal reasons. In the middle of the student section, Marcus sat next to Aisha. He felt the stares of his classmates but held his head high. "Last week, our school board unanimously approved a new zero-tolerance policy for bullying and discrimination," Principal Martinez continued. "Any student found engaging in such behavior will face immediate consequences, including suspension, mandatory counseling, and in serious cases, expulsion." A murmur rippled through the crowd. This was a dramatic shift from the school's previous approach, which had relied heavily on mornings and parent conferences, a system that had clearly failed. Additionally, the principal added, "We're launching a new student-led diversity and inclusion council. This group will work with faculty to create a more welcoming environment for all students." After the assembly, Marcus was approached by Mr. Collins, his homeroom teacher. "Marcus, the principal asked me to let you know that Tyler Brooks and his parents would like to meet with you tomorrow," Mr. Collins said. "It's entirely your choice if you want to attend." Marcus looked surprised. "What do they want?" "I believe they want to apologize," Mr. Collins replied. "But again, you're not obligated to go." That evening, Marcus discussed the meeting with his parents at dinner. "You don't have to see him if you don't want to," his mother assured him. Chief Johnson nodded in agreement. "This is your decision, son." Marcus pushed his food around his plate thoughtfully. "I think I should go. I want to hear what he has to say." The next day, Marcus and his father walked into a conference room at the school. Already seated were Tyler, his parents, and Principal Martinez. Tyler looked different, smaller somehow, without his usual group of followers. His father, once imposing, now appeared tired. Principal Martinez began the meeting. "Thank you all for coming. Tyler has something he would like to say." Tyler cleared his throat, his eyes fixed on the table. "I want to apologize for how I treated you," he said to Marcus. "What I did was wrong, really wrong." The words seemed rehearsed but sincere. "The things I said, the way I acted," Tyler continued, finally looking up. "There's no excuse for it. I'm sorry." Robert Brooks spoke next. "Marcus, I also owe you an apology. I failed as a parent by not teaching my son to respect others. I've enabled his behavior for years, and that stops now." Chief Johnson studied the man carefully. "What happens after today?" Principal Martinez answered, "Tyler will complete his 2-week suspension. Upon return, they'll be required to attend counseling twice weekly and complete 60 hours of community service with the local Anti-Discrimination Coalition." "And at home?" Chief Johnson pressed, looking directly at Robert Brooks. "Tyler's privileges have been revoked indefinitely," Robert replied. "No car, no phone, no sports until he demonstrates real change. We're also attending family counseling together." Marcus had remained silent throughout the exchange. Now all eyes turned to him. "I accept your apology," he said to Tyler. "But words are easy. Actions matter more." Tyler nodded. "I know. I'll show everyone, that I can be better." As they left the meeting, Marcus felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Justice had come to Riverdale, not through revenge or public humiliation, but through accountability and the promise of growth. Walking through the hallway, Marcus noticed something different. Students who had once avoided his gaze now smiled or nodded in greeting. The invisible barrier that had surrounded him was beginning to crumble. "You okay?" his father asked as they reached the parking lot. Marcus nodded. "Yeah, I think I am." For the first time since moving to Riverdale, Marcus truly believed it. 6 months passed since the confrontation that changed Lakeside High School. Spring had arrived in Riverdale, bringing fresh leaves to the trees and a renewed sense of possibility to the town. Marcus Johnson dribbled the basketball down the court, faking left before making a perfect layup. The crowd in the gymnasium erupted in cheers as Lakeside scored the winning points against their rival school. As team captain, Marcus had led the basketball team to their first regional championship in 5 years. Coach Wilson beamed with pride as his players celebrated. When the excitement died down, he gathered the team for a final huddle. "Great work today, especially you, Johnson," Coach said. "Your leadership made the difference this season." After showering and changing, Marcus headed out of the locker room where Aisha waited, now officially his girlfriend. "That was amazing," she said, hugging him tightly. As they walked through the hallway, Marcus noticed the changes that had transformed their school. Posters for the Diversity and Inclusion Council, which he now co-chaired, lined the walls. A large banner announced an upcoming cultural fair organized by students from different backgrounds. "Hard to believe how much has changed," Aisha commented, following his gaze. Indeed, Lakeside High School was a different place. After the implementation of the zero-tolerance policy, reported bullying incidents had dropped by over 70%. Students who once stayed silent now felt empowered to speak up when they witnessed inappropriate behavior. Outside the school, Marcus spotted a familiar figure leaning against a car in the parking lot. Tyler Brooks stood alone, watching the basketball team and their supporters exit the building. "I'll meet you at the celebration dinner," Marcus told Aisha, gesturing toward Tyler. She squeezed his hand. "Are you sure?" Marcus nodded. "It's okay." As Marcus approached, Tyler straightened up. He looked different now, less arrogant, more thoughtful. The community service hours he had completed at the local anti-discrimination coalition had gradually evolved into voluntary work. He now spent weekends helping organize educational workshops about tolerance and respect. "Great game," Tyler said, extending his hand. Marcus shook it firmly. "Thanks for coming." An awkward silence hung between them before Tyler spoke again. "I got accepted to State University. I'll be studying social work." "That's great," Marcus replied, genuinely surprised. "I didn't know you were interested in that field." Tyler shrugged. "Neither did I, until recently. Working at the coalition changed my perspective on a lot of things." They walked together toward the parking lot, talking about college plans and the upcoming graduation. Though not friends in the traditional sense, they had reached an understanding that few would have thought possible 6 months ago. "My dad asked about you," Tyler mentioned. "He's doing better too. The therapy helped us both." Robert Brooks had made his own changes. After resigning from the school board, he had redirected his energy toward establishing a foundation that funded anti-bullying programs in schools across the county. Later that evening, at the team celebration dinner, Chief Johnson watched his son laughing with his teammates and friends. The pride he felt went beyond basketball victories. Marcus had faced adversity with dignity and had emerged stronger, helping to transform an entire community in the process. Principal Martinez stopped by their table. "Chief Johnson, I wanted to let you know that our new policies are being adopted by 3 other schools in the district. Your son has made quite an impact." As dinner wound down, Coach Wilson clinked his glass for attention. "I'd like to propose a toast to our captain, Marcus Johnson, not just for leading us to victory on the court, but for showing us all what real courage looks like." The room erupted in applause. Marcus stood, somewhat embarrassed by the attention but grateful for the journey that had brought him here. Walking home that night with his father, Marcus looked up at the stars above Riverdale. "You know," Chief Johnson said, "when we moved here, I worried we might never fit in." Marcus smiled. "We didn't fit in, Dad. We helped make something new." The small town of Riverdale hadn't just accepted the Johnsons. It had been transformed by them, becoming a community where justice, respect, and understanding weren't just words in a school policy, but values that people actually lived by. And for Marcus, that made all the difference.